This art piece is called Multitasking from a Woman's Perspective, and in this video, I'm going to share with you how I created it. I started with creating my own reference image. I used pictures of my face along with stock images. The stock images, I sort of cut apart different figures and I removed the background. This allowed me to create a collage to make this figure that I wanted to portray. The theme of the exhibition is about time and our cultural perception of time. Being a woman from Western culture, I wanted to depict how I feel the expectations that I am supposed to somehow be a wife, a mother, a homemaker. I'm supposed to work, be the one that communicates and organizes everything in the family. And I felt that this figure represented that. Once I had the figure exactly how I wanted it, I made a drawing that I could then transfer over to a piece of fabric. I initially prepped several canvases, each about 8 to 12 inches or about 30 to 40 centimeters. I used matte medium to adhere scrap pieces of fabric, namely from bed sheets, that I could then paint on and also embroider on separately. After prepping the canvases you see here, I switched over to a linen style sheet fabric because I felt it worked better with the project. I also had plans of making the same type of piece, but from a male perspective. I just ran out of time before the call had to be submitted. All in all, I prepped about 4 canvases, but this is the canvas and you'll see the linen fabric that I used for the final project. So I only used this one and I am stapling it down. I'd already adhered it with the matte medium and I just want the loose backing to be stapled to the back of the canvas frame to just ensure it's a little neater, tidier, cleaned up, and that the fabric isn't going to go anywhere. This painting is composed of 2 pieces. One is a background and then the other is a stitched foreground, if you will. So I need to make sure that both line up. I use my concept drawing and I trace onto the background, and then in another video you're going to see me trace onto the portion that will be stitched and then adhered to the top of the canvas later on. Once I had the background traced, it was time to start painting. I'm using acrylic paint. It works very well on the fabric, especially when it's been treated with the matte medium. The matte medium provides a very smooth glass-like surface over most fabrics, especially if you've layered it a few times, so it makes painting very easy. I chose a very simple background for a few reasons. One, every time I tried to do something photorealistic, I felt like I was losing the character. She was just falling into the background and the story was becoming lost. 2, the political cartoon-like features that this gives helps convey the absurdity that this woman is expected to be so much and have so many different roles. Here is the portion where I am tracing the image onto the fabric. This will be in the foreground of the painting, and I am only tracing the picture or the image of the woman and the countertop that she is cooking on. What this allows me to do, keeping it separate, it makes it a lot easier to stitch on than if I were to stitch this directly onto the canvas. I can then also add additional detail through painting and any other embellishing that I might choose to do before adding it to the canvas itself. Stitching by hand is probably the most time-consuming portion of my work, and because it took place over hours of time, I went ahead and just took a few photos that I will share here, almost like a time lapse. Before adding any additional embellishing, I plan to do just a little bit of stitching on the project. I added in paint. Paint has to be done in layers because fabric is very thirsty. I'm not using any specialized acrylic paint here. I'm not using any fabric paints or any treatments. So that means that in a lot of areas, the fabric is going to absorb a little more acrylic paint than you would normally use on a canvas. Each time I put some of the paint on, I have to let it dry, and then I can add in the upper layers. And in the upper layers is where more of the blending can occur. Now it's time to bring the two pieces together. The painting has dried. It's time to remove it from the hoop. I'll need to cut away any excess fabric and get an idea of the placement of this foreground piece in relation to the background. Once I have that done, I can trim away all the excess fabric and adhere it to the canvas. I left some of the fabric at the bottom of the piece so that I could wrap it around that background canvas and use the stapler to attach those portions of it to the canvas itself. I then used hand stitching to adhere the figure to the upper portions of the canvas. When I created this piece, I was on a timeline. I had a set deadline in order to submit it for this exhibition. So I kept the piece relatively simplistic. My embellishment was minimal. Overall, I think that actually helped the piece in the long run. It really helps convey the simplicity of the story that I'm trying to tell. That this woman is a little frayed around the edges. You see kind of that raw feeling as the cloth is coming undone in sections. And you get a sense that she is doing everything she can to try to maintain all of these tasks. In a lot of my pieces, you will see multiple faces. I do this because for me, it symbolizes identity. In this particular piece, the woman is grappling with all of the identities that she is expected to take on in her role as a woman. I purposefully set this in a kitchen because I felt it conveyed that old saying where they think a woman's place is in the kitchen. She has so many identities, the figure here. She is mother, she is wife, she is caregiver, she is responsible for the household, she is organizing their life, she's responsible for family communications, and she is, again, responsible for educating, for being productive. There is this sense in Western culture that we must be productive no matter what. And I think this piece shows that there is this constant pull on women, but I also think in a greater sense on people in general. Western culture really wants you to be productive all of the time.